Welcome to this morning's meeting of the Environmental Advisory Committee, Monday, March 16th, 10 a.m. Marco, could you do the roll call, please?
Mr. Byrne?
Yeah, good morning. I'm here. Am I
Ms.
coming
Peck?
through?
Ms. Peck? Ms. Good?
Here.
Ms. Nillis?
Here.
Ms. Metz?
Here.
Ms. Keller?
Here.
Ms. Burns?
Here.
Ms. Hoffman?
Here.
Commissioner Thier?
Here. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. We're going to do a slight reorganization of the agenda or the order of the agenda. Mr. Shinko is here to present on artificial turf, so we're going to go ahead and do artificial turf first. That'll be followed by dark skies and then future agenda items. Mr. Shinko.
Good morning, Commissioner and members of the Environmental Advisory Committee. Thanks for having me this morning. I'm going to just speak a little bit about today artificial turf regulation in residential districts. I do apologize for the short notice. If you're here in person, you should have a hard copy, and virtually, hopefully you received a electronic copy of the revised ordinance that has essentially the first couple pages of the proposed, the purpose of it and the rationale, and then afterwards, similarly to the now obsolete version, the draft ordinance. And so I'll take you through a PowerPoint presentation today. And really what I'd like to preface this before starting is in the, on the second page of the revised, under surface materials as infrastructure, the last sentence there, this draft ordinance represents simply a measured first step in a broader surface materials policy framework that will eventually address driveways, pervious pavement, gravel surfaces, and other constructed ground surfaces in a coordinated manner. So I just want that to be on the back of our minds, that this is simply a first step, and to have a dialogue about artificial turf this morning. And so with that, I'll go ahead and get started. I can't see that on my screen. Marco, is there any way?
It's so small.
Okay. So what I'm going to say here, this is just the executive summary. As far as the big picture goes, this ordinance clarifies how artificial turf is treated under the city's residential zoning framework. Currently, it's not spoken of at all. Our code is silent on the topic. It preserves existing standards for natural area, stormwater infiltration, and tree protection. It does not ban artificial turf, but this draft regulates location and performance to reduce environmental and enforcement risk. So we have some clarifying definitions, establishing a surface classification, and requiring measurable pervious performance. The committee's role today is advisory to review the environmental rationale and identify any policy questions for future consideration, keeping in mind that this is a first draft. Why this ordinance was proposed, why are we here today and talking about it? Why did staff work on this? Artificial turf is increasingly proposed in residential yards, but existing code language doesn't clearly address how it's classified. There's nothing for staff to fall back on as far as what types are used, where it's used, and how it's used. So this ambiguity creates inconsistent application and helps to prevent disputes during permit review. The ordinance provides a consistent, transparent framework grounded in stormwater performance, soil function, and environmental best practices. And at the bottom there, you'll see just a goal to provide property owners, installers, and city staff with clear, defensible standards without prohibiting artificial turf outright. So why do surface materials matter in Rehoboth? One of the big ones here, we're 1 square mile. We're in a fully built-out coastal city. We have very little undeveloped land that remains, and most regulatory change affects redevelopment and incremental improvements, not large new construction. We have high groundwater, low-lying coastal topography here, and high groundwater table makes surface permeability a direct determinant of drainage system performance. We also have aging infrastructure here in Rehoboth. These drainage systems sized for historic land cover. Incremental replacement of vegetation with hardscape or synthetic surfaces adds to the cumulative load. With redevelopment pressure, property owners are replacing lawns with turf, pavers, gravel, and decorative surfaces. Code must distinguish permeable versus impermeable systems. Again, we do not have currently a definition in our code of permeable versus impermeable or pervious versus impervious. Can move on to the next one, please, Marco. What does our existing code say? In the residential districts, when it comes to lot coverage, we have that, you can see on the slide here, the code sections that they come from, but lot coverage requirements come from Chapter 270 zoning, and they are on the flip side of the same coin with natural area and lot coverage. Natural area requirements at a bare minimum, every lot in the R1, R2, or R1S districts is 50%. And I'll go into what that is in the next slide. Stormwater infiltration assumptions and reliance on uncompacted soils. And this comes from the recent stormwater master plan that was presented recently at a commissioner meeting. This ordinance also has a measure for tree protection with critical root zones, canopy preservation, and site disturbance impacts. So what this classification gap resolved, the artificial turf is neither structural lot coverage nor natural area. However, we can talk about that today. The 274, which is the definition section of our zoning code, under structure, it creates additional ambiguity. Engineered turf-based systems could qualify as structures, triggering our special provision section of code for the yard prohibition. This ordinance resolves both gaps by classifying compliant turf as an improved ground surface similar to driveways, sidewalks. I don't want to say patios here, it's really driveways and sidewalks. So please exclude patios from there. And underneath here, natural area. This is from the definition section of our code, is that portion of the gross lot area dedicated to trees, grass, flowers, bushes, and other plantings and or mulched areas. We use that area under zoning review for organic living ecosystems, and that's the intent behind natural area currently. So artificial turf and natural area, I think this is going to be one of the areas we want to talk about today the most. Right now, natural area functions as vegetated ground cover that supports infiltration, soil health, and ecological performance. Artificial turf is not living vegetative cover and does not provide the same functional performance. The ordinance keeps the existing definition intact and regulates turf through measurable performance and location controls. The ordinance expressly excludes artificial turf from counting towards minimum natural area, and you can see there, again, the 50% minimum gross lot area is natural area for all residential districts in Rehoboth. Just on the bottom there for a cross-reference, it's not just the total lot area. A minimum of 50% of the front yard setback area shall also remain natural area in the residential districts. So when we look at the natural area requirements for a lot under zoning review, we're looking at it as a holistic picture for 50%, and then on top of that, for the front yard sections, typically 15 feet in R1 districts, 10 feet in R2 districts, half of that has to be natural as well. Compliant turf, artificial turf installations must not reduce total grass lot natural area below this threshold. Compliant turf is not counted as natural area or lot coverage. Non-compliant turf would be deemed impervious surface counted towards lot coverage under this draft ordinance. Here we have stormwater and infiltration considerations. Stormwater performance depends on uncompacted soils and living vegetated cover that absorbs runoff and supports infiltration. What we see a lot of times after the new builds is compacted soils. And that will take what once had an infiltration rate of so many inches per hour, and when the land and ground is excavated for either homes, pools, other accessory structures, it's compacted again, and that hardens the soil, and now there's a runoff issue. And this is a fairly common problem with new home builds or very large projects of soil disturbance. The city's stormwater planning framework relies on infiltration-based assumptions where uncompacted soils and living vegetation are preserved. Artificial turf systems installed over compacted subgrade or clogged base layers can perform more like impervious surfaces over time. And down here is just a table of the classification by installation type. You can see on the left, installation types, the turf on compacted base, a turf on crushed stone base, and an engineered permeable system, and whether that behavior would be impervious, semi-pervious, or pervious, and whether it would be treated under this draft ordinance as compliant or non-compliant. We see that the engineered permeable system that has that base, that sub-base, that removes that compacted soil, that puts the PFAS-free and the compliant sub-base system there below the turf so it can do its job as compliant, where anything else would be treated or with the intent of it being treated as impervious. This is always an important thing to bring up. How does this fit with our CDP and our strategic, to the 2025 strategic plan? These are quotes taken from both. So in our 2020 CDP, it's to protect and enhance the character of the existing neighborhoods. This simply retains, this current draft ordinance retains that 50% natural area. And also to preserve and improve the city's natural systems and environmental quality. Under our strategic plan, to promote a high quality of life through a commitment to environmental stewardship, and to be a leading coastal community with unique character preserved for generations to come. So what this means for our turf policy, prioritizes living vegetation and healthy soils in visible yards, supports stormwater infiltration, environmental resilience, protects neighborhood character and streetscape quality, and provides clear, predictable standards for residents and staff. The ESC principles, this is what our city code already has adopted when it comes to stormwater management. We use the Delaware Erosion Sediment Control Handbook, particularly two sections in there, which is vegetated ground cover and mulched areas. These are specific requirements from the ESC handbook that we use very frequently for soil stabilization as one of the factors too that's required for a certificate of occupancy. And it provides us as well, city staff, as well as homeowners, property owners, business owners, and contractors, the way that we currently use these standards to make sure that they're working within our adopted code. And so taking that into account, what these standards do is they require unique vegetative stabilizations as foundational concepts for erosion control following soil disturbance on construction sites. Artificial turf is not living cover rooted in soil and does not stabilize soil through root structure. And accordingly, artificial turf cannot satisfy vegetative stabilization requirements following the soil disturbance during installation. The ordinance aligns city enforcement logic with the established erosion and sediment control stabilization concepts. What that essentially means is that there's no provision in the ESC handbook for artificial turf. That handbook is also silent on the issue currently. So this draft ordinance tries to work within that framework while still allowing the city and residents to use artificial turf. And down there, practical consequence, a property owner who disturbs soil to install artificial turf cannot use the turf itself to satisfy post-disturbance vegetative stabilization requirements under the ESC handbook. The ESC standards apply during and immediately following construction disturbance. Artificial turf does not qualify as the required living vegetative cover for that purpose. So this was just one of the things that we thought about when developing this draft ordinance to take into account. Where should we put it? Where should artificial turf go? Essentially, this is in fenced areas. And I'll go through the height of the fence and how that weaves around our zoning code in a few different sections. Artificial turf, as the operative standard, may only be installed within a yard area enclosed by a fence not less than 6 feet in height. And why did 6 feet work for this particular ordinance? We have a couple different code sections that tie on when fences can be only 42 inches and when they can be greater, and when certain corner lot properties can have 2 front yards, further complicating the issue. Under 27043A, in our special provisions section of our zoning code, it limits fences required in front yards areas to 3.5 feet or 42 inches. That's why you see most of the Rehoboth with the lower fence heights, either in front yards or on corner properties. A 6-foot fence is only legally permissible outside required front yards. The fence height rule therefore automatically excludes all front yards without requiring the ordinance to recharacterize yard classification. This section relies entirely on existing fence rules, not new yard definitions, which is something that we wanted to avoid. For corner lots, 270-41 requires a front yard on each street corner. On each street, a corner lot abuts, but both front yards are subject to the 3.5-foot fence limit under 270-43A, so neither qualify for artificial turf installations regardless of lot configuration. No yard reclassification is needed or made. There's a note under 270-43B for the site triangle restriction that further limits the buildable fence footprint. So what this draft ordinance does is if you have a 6-foot fence enclosed in an area, you can use the artificial turf system for that, but not on areas where the fence would be 42 inches or less. There's other ways we can go around this, and we can discuss that, but that's currently what this does, because the other way to do it would require additional changes to our zoning code, further going down that rabbit hole of starting to tweak other definitions in other code sections, which could have other unintended consequences. Materials. This slide speaks to PFAS, and this is one of the real reasons why we wanted to bring this up, as currently we have no code regulations on artificial turf. So it's not a structure, it's not natural area, but what could you put down currently? Could you just go and get an outdoor carpet from Lowe's or Home Depot that's going to break down, very quickly and have chemicals, microplastics that we don't want leaching into our storm drains or getting into our lakes. So this slide goes over those material restrictions here. Some of the standards: some artificial turf products contain PFAS and infill systems that generate microplastics, which can enter stormwater, soil, and coastal ecosystems. Artificial turf surfaces can reach temperatures significantly higher than natural grass, contributing to localized heat island effects and eliminating the evaporatization function of the living ground cover. And the ordinance applies a precautionary screening approach to exclude systems with higher environmental risk profiles. So that would be kind of during the review period. What's required under this draft ordinance: PFAS-free materials, organic or mineral-based infill, cork, coconut fiber, wash sand. What does it prohibit? Rubber, crumb infill, synthetic, polymeric pellets, microplastics generating infill. Down there below, you'll see the PFAS certification flexibility. Compliance may be demonstrated through manufacturer documentation or third-party certification acceptable to the building official, including certifications that may evolve as national or state environmental standards develop. We were thinking about including maybe some ASTM standards, some national standards. However, year after year, those standards will change names, some will be retired. This is just it's a constant thing with the national standards. So this ordinance, again, just allows, we adopt by reference, and so as those references change, we can adopt with those reference changes. It was important to put verification, maintenance, and enforcement here so that there's actual guidelines for what to do when a lot doesn't comply and how to check it. There's a three-stage framework. There's pre-installation, where a Delaware licensed professional engineer or landscape architect certifies the system meets the pervious definition submitted to Building and Licensing Department prior to installation. The building official may waive certification for closed drainage systems not relying on native soil infiltration. The waiver applies to recertification only, not to material, location, or maintenance requirements. This is if you have to change it out. Artificial turf has a shelf life, and it will need changed over time. Post-installation, the city may require field verification where conditions, observed drainage issues, or compliance concerns arise. Recognized field methods acceptable to the city apply as appropriate to site and system design. Again, that gives the city it's malleable where those references can change and or city standards change when we adopt construction standards, and as those things may change, this allows us to work with those changes in years to come. And the ongoing maintenance, the property owner must maintain drainage and infiltration performance. System must not impair performance through compaction, clogging, or material degradation. Off-site runoff, persistent ponding, or erosion constitutes a violation subject to correction and enforcement. That, again, would be something that would be put on most likely the schedule of fees and penalties. And yeah, we can go to the next one. So this is the slide, what the ordinance does and does not do. What this ordinance does, it does classify compliant turf as improved ground surface, not a structure, not natural area. It resolves the 270-4R definitions and 270-42, the special provisions, structure ambiguity expressly. It excludes turf from natural area calculations. It applies a 6-foot fence trigger, excluding all required front yards, including corner lots. Requires pervious performance verification with a limited waiver authority. Screens out PFAS and microplastic generating materials, and it deems non-compliant turf as an impervious surface for lot coverage. What it does not do, it does not ban artificial turf outright. It does not redefine natural area citywide. It does not reduce stormwater protections. It doesn't weaken tree protection standards. It doesn't create city-specific testing protocols. It relies on recognized field methods. It doesn't modify other sections of city code. It applies existing fencing rules as the operative standard, and it doesn't allow the building official to waive material, location, or maintenance requirements. So lastly, there's 5 questions here. Of course, if there's more, happy to discuss, but these are 5 that might be pertinent today. Does the ordinance appropriately clarify how artificial turf should be treated under the existing code framework, including the improved ground surface classification? Does the 6-foot fence trigger work as the operative location standard, including its automatic application to corner lots? Is it appropriate to exclude artificial turf from the city's natural area requirement while deeming non-compliant installations as impervious surface? Are the material standards right? PFAS-free, no rubber crumb, no microplastics generating infill, and is the certification flexibility appropriate? And lastly, is the 3-stage verification framework clear and workable? And is the building official waiver authority appropriately scoped? This is the last slide. I want to thank you. I know this is a lot of information all at once, but happy to open the floor up if there's any questions, anything that you would like to talk about.
Before we open the floor to Corey, I want to give, sorry, got to speak into the microphone. I just wanted to, Mrs. Kelleher wanted to make a few comments on PFAS, so I'd like to allow her to make those comments, and then Corey will come back to you if we could. Thank you.
So actually, Corey, that last Q4 was a good segment for what I want to talk about today, or show you today. I had asked Craig back in January, because I had read the first ordinance. So my
Excuse me, Francis, just microphone. Thank you.
so really what most of what I want to talk about or show is about PFAS-free, and specifically as demonstrated through manufacturer documentation. There's an issue with that, Corey. So anyway, I'll just show, oops. Oh, no, sorry, this is it, right? So Marco's going to help me because I don't have Corey's good skills anymore on the computer. And really I'm going to move this guy over. So really what I'm going to just tell you a little bit about, I have 2 slides on PFAS background because I just thought, well, let's make sure everybody really understands what we're talking about when we're talking about PFAS. So what I'm going to show you today is some results or test findings that the University of Massachusetts at Lowell pulled together. It's really a review article compiling all of the information that was available on PFAS contents in the plastic resin blades. So I appreciated everything, Corey, that was in the ordinance about the infill. That in the past has been like one of the big sore spots, the rubber infill and that. But now what I'm going to really show everyone is that the PFAS is in the plastic grass blades, the resin blades. And just to say, per means in Latin thoroughly, and poly in Greek means many. And the fluoro, of course, is fluorine, and that's what I'm going to talk about, fluorine. And the alkyl refers to hydrocarbon compounds. And really what is going on with PFAS is that they're replacing all the hydrogens with fluorine, and that's how they become fluorocarbon compounds. And the reason they say substances and not just compounds is because these substances exist as gases, like Freon, and solids, but I'm only going to, of course, talk about solid. So I just want to show this slide. This is very busy, and you don't really need to, try to follow it all. And I'll just say this is taken from the Consumer Product Safety Commission's white paper on PFAS in consumer products, and that's online. Everybody can read that. This one is dated June of 23, so it's a little old, and there's a lot more info, and I've added in a little bit more because there is a really lot more info, especially on the toxicity of PFAS since then. And really, the main thing I want to use this slide to show you is 2 things. And what people in environmental worries talk about are 3 words: persistence, bioaccumulation, and toxicity. So not PFA, but PBT. So persistence, what you really need to know about PFAS, it's all about the darn carbon to fluorine bond. And that is a man-made bond. It is not found in nature. So there are no natural mechanisms to break it down. There's no microbes in the soil. None of that goes on. So these compounds and gases can last for not like 100 years to break down, like 900,000 years to break down. The carbon to fluorine bond, it's the strongest bond found in organic chemistry. It's a man-made bond. It's not natural, so it's very strong. The reason that we end up with bioaccumulation is, and this slide I do want to point out here, down here, the little fish, that symbol is showing, bioaccumulation in fish. Well, I drew my own little symbol right there, bioaccumulation in man, because all of this PFAS is bioaccumulating inside of us. And again, this is all like never seen before kind of stuff. It binds to serum albumin protein, the protein in our blood, which is half of the proteins in our blood is serum albumin. It then also binds in our tissues, in our bodies, and it really is found in liver. And this is some of the new stuff. I mean, recently there was just an article about the bioaccumulation in the lungs of children, and that sort of leading to explanations of different problems or diseases, if you will. So here that leads to toxicity. So the big thing is when you have this persistent fluorocarbons and they're bioaccumulating, you end up with what I call shocking toxicity. I mean, we're kind of used to people being exposed to chemicals, getting cancers, testicular cancer, kidney cancer, the different cancers. But these fluorocarbons are causing thyroid disease, they're causing high cholesterol that actually even leads to stroke, can lead to stroke. They're absolutely doing liver damage, all kinds of things. It's crazy. It's found in the cord blood of neonatal infants, and they're seeing all kinds of developmental issues now with children. And that, Jan, I'll just say, that is, I've added, because this was from 23, and a lot more since. Immune system in adults, the lung disease in children, decreased fertility, developmental delays in children, accelerated puberty. It's affecting hormones and all kinds of things. So the more they study, the worse it gets. Before I show you now the results, or some of the, I'm not going to show you all the data, I'll just summarize it. But before I do, I did want to show this. To put the PFAS measurements in artificial turf in perspective, this is the EPA's level now of drinking water. So this is going to be going into effect, in the state of Delaware is actually going to put it into effect even sooner than the federal government requires. But as you can see right here, the maximum concentration that's going to be allowed for certain PFAS chemicals, or I'll call them fluorocarbons, like PFO and PFAS, is going to be at the level of 4 parts per trillion. This is what I really want to highlight to you. The maximum contaminant level goal is, what that means is, that is the level of a contaminant in drinking water below which there is no known or expected risk to health. So the bottom line here is there is no safe level of these fluorocarbons. Then I'm going to just point out to you the sad situation that people refer to is regrettable substitutions. So what's going on in the PFAS world since the early 1990s is that one substance is banned, and then they allow another one that they think is less toxic or less persistent, but then they find out, no, actually, that's pretty much just as bad, and then that one becomes subject to bans, and they put in another one, and there are 647 of them in industry right now as we speak, being used. So they have plenty of these fluorocarbon compounds to use. I'll just throw that out. I just wanted to show you that that's what the EPA is able to measure 29 different compounds. And I just want to show you this too because it's relevant when I get to the what they do with the resin, the grass blades. This is just a picture of how they end up separating these compounds in water, and then they have standards that they can use to then identify and quantitate the given thing. And so back to this, the EPA has validated methods where they can measure these compounds in water, and they also have validated methodology that's been developed for soil that includes biosolids and surface water and other things. And, these methods have to be super sensitive in order to pick up, parts per trillion. And you have to actually know what you're looking for and have a standard so that you can figure out, that you're looking for and measuring what you think you are, what you want to measure. Okay, so sorry for that long intro, but just wanted people to have an understanding of that. This is now a table that summarizes the normal, additives that are put in artificial turf blades. Number one up there is the PFAS, and I won't even talk about the other ones. But there's the PFAS, and the reason it's added, and I'm going to show you a picture, and it's kind of crazy because it's all about the manufacturing process. It's added to be able to extrude the molten or melted plastic in order to form it into like these turf blades in a continuous process. But there's an example of one of the chemicals used, and I'm actually highlighted. I wrote that in, and I'm highlighted it because it appears in one of the examples I'm going to show you. Okay, go a little quicker. This is a lot going on here. I guess what I really just want to show you, you have to envision yourself in a giant factory where you have a giant hopper where they pour in the pellets of plastic. So just most artificial turf blades are made of polyethylene. So you have your polyethylene chips, and then they add in all those other additives. They're put into these giant hoppers. The mixed dry ingredients then go into this thing, which I never knew about, but now I do, an extruder. It's called an extruder. And what happens is when the plastic mix goes into it, it has these heating elements. And the middle part is I forget, I'm sorry. This is I can't remember, sorry, the name of this rotating thing, but this is what pushes the molten plastic with all its additives out through a die, which is a metal tool. So you hear of tools and dies. So a die, in this case, the die is a flat metal plate that has perforations so that when the molten resin is pushed through it, it comes out into the shape you want. And this is just, so it's the polymer melt, which is taffy-like, is pushed through a die with a large number of small holes. And I will just say to everybody, you can actually see videos of this online, if you want. But this is just a picture showing that when the polymer, and they're talking there about the PE, the polyethylene, but the polyethylene with and this is the PPA, which is the polymer processing agent, the Dynamar, the PPA helps to orients and lines up along the walls, but it's also sprinkled all throughout. It's all in there. And it is it's called a slip agent, or what they call a slip agent, which is slippery. It allows this thick, molten, taffy-like thing to be able to flow through these tiny holes and form the long strands, like thread of the what will be the grass blades before they're put into the mats and cut and all that. Okay, so I just want to also note here that 20 parts per million that they're adding is equal to 20 million parts per trillion. So you can kind of put that in a frame of reference to what the safe water levels are. This is the only slide I'm going to show you of the data, and it's because this is really the best set of study, which was done at the University of Notre Dame. And this woman was developing, this analytical chemist, she was developing methods to be able to measure the fluorocarbon in other matrices. So like I said, the EPA, you can measure it in water and in soil, but there is no validated methods to measure it in, like, say, a plastic matrix. So she had developed she was working on methods, and this is one of them, and it just is to show you that she looked at 27 turf samples, and every one of them had PFAS or fluorocarbon levels at the order of magnitude of at least like around 100 parts per million. So now I'm going to just show you really quick, Thomas, a couple of examples of what manufacturers have, what's been out there in the manufacturing world. The first one is just it's an example from Sprint Turf, which is one of the 12, there's 12 major manufacturers of the artificial grass part, the resin blades in the USA, Sprint Turf. They basically sold their turf to a Philadelphia, a field in South Philly. And again, this is a theme that's going to recur. They were told it was PFAS-free. And they actually stated that it was based on testing, their own lab tests. Well, when you actually look at their lab tests, so Corey, I'll just say, I didn't just look at what's in this paper. I delved down into all the references and then delve down into the data behind it to see if what they're saying was true, or, because talk is easy. But indeed, what is found in this is that they say, quote, the manufacturer, all extractable PFAS compounds were non-detect at a level of 2 to 4 parts per billion. So the problem with that is, one, the limit of detection is super high. It's up at 2,000 to 4,000 parts per trillion. All that means is that the levels in there are above 2,000 to 4,000 parts per trillion. And they're talking about just extractable PFAS, which I won't go into the details on that, but it's sort of like, well, that's just what was maybe what could be extracted was what was on the surface coating of the grass, thread. So I verified all of this and printed out like their lab reports.
Francis,
Yep.
could I ask a
hurry up.
question? Yeah,
Yeah.
so I want to make sure I'm following, right, and going back
okay.
to the allowable level. So one of the earlier slides,
Yes.
I think it was 0.4 parts per, that was a question, 0.4 parts per
That'll be in drinking water.
in drinking
That's a
waters.
drinking, yeah.
Okay, so
So, but what the reason I showed that slide was to show you the health thing, that really the true zero
Yep.
is the level that is safe.
yeah,
There's no, in fact, in other words, there is no level of these compounds that is considered safe.
Yeah.
And that is because of the whole issue of the bioaccumulation.
Yeah.
So there are no standards, for anything anything other than water, and coming soon, the biosolids.
so PFAS is it's a very sensitive topic for the city.
Yes.
For those of you who are not aware, the city's spending somewhere between $4 and $5 million on remediation efforts to remove PFAS from the drinking water.
Yep.
So we want to, it only makes sense to not allow PFAS at all in the city.
That's
So
what
my
I
question
say.
to you
That's what I
is,
Yes.
Corey's, I believe what Corey was presented said no PFAS,
Yes.
right? Is that correct? Corey's off to the
Yes.
side. Is that what your code says?
PFAS free.
Yeah, there's a definition.
But the definition includes that Corey would base that on manufacturer documentation.
Okay.
So I'll jump ahead and just pass some of these and show you AstroTurf.
Okay. And before you do
Okay.
that, because I want to wrap this part up so we can
Okay.
get back to
Yeah.
Up here. So PFAS based on manufacturer specifications. So let me ask, the basic question, which is, does any artificial turf exist that is PFAS free?
The answer right now, Craig,
Yep.
is no.
Okay.
Honestly, it is no. And I looked at all of these, and they all have what I call deceptive ways, deceptive tactics of addressing and saying that their thing is PFAS free. And one of them is the one I just showed, where they set these high limits of detection. So it's sort of, who knows what's, if they could have PFAS levels at, below that, but they're not saying it. They're not using the methods in that. I don't know what, I shouldn't talk to the methods, but the level of where they're setting their detection limit is so high that that saying that there's none in there, they didn't extract any, and there's none in there, it's not detectable, is misleading, because who knows? So I'll just give you this one, because AstroTurf, I'll jump ahead, and I have other ones where I'll just say this, Smart Turf.
Let's do the AstroTurf and then we'll.
Smart Turf looks for specific PFAS compounds that have been banned for 20 years. So their thing is misleading. Here's AstroTurf. They are the only one who actually claims, right on their website, that they're PFAS free. But now you dig down, and here they even have Q&As. So at least they have the Q&A online. And the Q&A is, how do you test for PFAS? And then, so right here is the important part. If the product has less than 100 parts per million of organic fluorine, organic means it's connected to a carbon, it is considered PFAS free by Sport Group. And then they really say, this is a valid way of blah, blah, and it's like, not, not. But the real point is, they set their own definition of PFAS-free. Now, that's really bogus. Okay, so I'll leave that.
So while Francis is still up there, before we go back to Corey, any questions for Francis from the committee? Yes. Okay. Go ahead, Heather.
Oh, I just want to make sure that you state really clearly what you're saying is that there are no artificial turf options available that you can say in your background are PFAS-free.
Yes, and I'll just say this. I read a lot of articles online, and again, you have to take them with grains of salt, but the Sierra Club has stated there are no PFAS-free, there is no PFAS-free artificial turf on the market. I didn't want to just use that to come to Corey. That's why I delved into, is that really true? And the answer is yes, it is true. There is no artificial turf blades manufactured currently that are PFAS-free.
Other.
And, I mean, they did eliminate the PFAS from a lot of the infill. So they're trying to, but they're stuck now because of this issue of, and now I'm going out on a limb to say this because I'm out of my element, but I don't think you can actually manufacture and extrude that molten plastic without having a slippery agent in there.
I have a question. If I don't walk on the turf, if I have nothing to do with it, is there gas that's being emitted that is not good for everybody?
No gas is being emitted unless you heat it up.
Okay.
These thermoplastics, they're called thermoplastics because they have high heat resistance. And let me throw this out to put, these fluorocarbons serve some very good purposes. They're used on the gaskets on the space rockets going up into outer space because they can withstand high temperature. They're used in medical catheters for their slipperiness. So they've really improved our world if you've ever had a cardiac cath done, but they really have some useful purposes, and as do, before them, the chlorocarbon compounds. And the way the EPA and other regulators are headed, I'm just going to say, is towards that place of we need to eliminate these from non-essential uses. There are some uses. The medical device community is sort of trying to say, don't eliminate PFAS altogether because we need it. So again, that's how they went with the chlorocarbons. They eliminated them from hairspray and such, but where they're really can't be replaced and are really key to some essential use, then they're allowed.
Other questions up here?
Yeah,
Okay,
Craig, this is Dick.
go to the
I have a
public.
question. Am I coming through?
Yep, yes, you are. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Corey, and thanks, Francis. A lot of good information. I don't want to belabor this, but I think Francis is making just incredibly good points here for us. And so, Francis, just to ask in kind of a little different way, the proposed ordinance in front of us uses the language that will accept high performance, environmentally responsible artificial turf. So are you saying that there's really no such thing, or that's really not a good way to describe what we're trying to achieve?
I would say that at this point in time, there is no such like environmentally, I can't repeat those words you just said, Richard, but yes, I thought a lot about how could Corey modify the thing about the PFAS. And I just can't come up with any way, unless in the future that somebody does develop truly PFAS-free. Right now, it is not out there. All of the info from all the manufacturers is truly misleading. They all contain PFAS in the blades. They've taken it out of the infills and that, but it's still kind of in there.
Okay, thank you.
Please.
I mean, Corey mentioned that there's a limited shelf life. Did you find any information on that in your research?
You mean
about
the
what is-
limited shelf life
like,
of the
artificial turf?
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
What,
They,
I mean,
they
what is the
repeatedly
what is
say
the
it's
lifetime?
8 to 10 years. They repeat that a lot, that it's about 8 to 10 years. And
what
then it
hap-
goes to landfills.
Yeah, and what-
then it leaches
Right,
into
right.
the soil. So the environmentalists, if you will, I mean, they have a whole other, you can read all about where they're coming from, that, this product, which really should be viewed as a non-essential, and actually, I'm going to just really jump, because my last part, I just wanted to touch upon regulations and where the regulations are going. And I'm just going to throw up, here's state of Rhode Island. They've already passed a strong consumer products law, and PFAS, artificial turf is on their list. And that's true in Vermont, and now I can't off the top of my head come up with, and what I did want to tell also to Corey, I was going to give him, this is the wording, but really what I want to say is Cape May they passed an artificial turf ordinance. So cities and states across America have passed laws about PFAS in consumer products. And generally, I'll go back here, they'll start listing them and they kind of prioritize them, and they're a bit of a rollout. So a lot of states have already, they can substitute for the PFAS that's in firefighting foam. And so they're banning the old PFAS-containing firefighting foam because now there's alternatives. And the same is true for food packaging. But then they go down and they are tackling these things kind of in a rollout.
I'd like to go to the public. Any public comments? Yes, Jan, please come to the lectern, name, address.
Jan Conacy, 42 Oak Avenue. Okay. The reason that this artificial grass ordinance has come into question or come into existence is because of severe problems. I can't speak for South Rehoboth, but I can speak for North Rehoboth. Our soil is bad. And I can speak for my neighbor across the street. She has to change her sod every other year because the water doesn't go through, it sits. I know there's other people who have the same issue. So the issue is, and I know some of you up here, and I know that you have concrete patios and lots of concrete in your backyard, so you don't have these issues. But we do, and our neighbors do, and a lot of our friends do in North Rehoboth. So the question is, then, what do you do? What does the city do if you have to change your sod every other year? If you can't grow grass, and I have talked to several of the landscape companies like Bellaterra, and we have a lot of trees, so there's a lot of shade. I don't have any problem with using mulch everywhere, the pine needles. But what do we do when your soil just isn't going to uncompact and there's lots of clay? Are we going to say, well, you could use pervious pavers? We have a pervious paver driveway. It's a lot more expensive, but if you are in you know, if you want to be a good environmentalist, then you do that. What the question is, and I would say to Corey is, the question is, what do we do instead? What do we do to help people who have, could be a pool, it just could be their grandchildren playing in the yard, you know, and stuff like that, which it just doesn't work. So what do you do? That's my question. I'm throwing it back to you guys.
Ron?
Hi, Ron Bowman at 39 Henlopen. I prepared just a little something, so I'm sorry for it not being speaking into your eyes, but I wanted to make sure I got most of my points in. I'm thankful to this committee for engaging in this thoughtful discussion about all the impacts, including the negative impacts of artificial grass. I'm thankful for Corey for bringing this to the public so that we can get this discussion going, as I've been talking to him for several years. I too am concerned about the environmental issues and impacts of artificial grass. I also think it's important for this committee to consider the benefits of pervious artificial grass, as they are many. One such example is stormwater runoff. This is a real problem, not only for the city's infrastructure, but to the many residents who take on rainwater from neighbors due to the lay of the land, so to speak, topography of the land. And these are serious drainage issues of residents, but unfortunately, the city does not allow for a permitted solution. Pervious artificial grass is a solution. Stormwater management is an important topic for this committee and for the city as we look at ways to decrease the amount of water runoff. Pervious services were discussed at the most recent mayor and commissioners meeting this past week, and it's also listed as a future agenda item at meetings at this very committee. We need to consider pervious artificial grass for the benefits that it provides, not only to the city, but to the residents as they deal with serious drainage issues on their property. Artificial grass is used around the world, but we must also acknowledge the impacts due to the importance of the proximity to our great beach, our ocean. Many times, our city officials and elected officials look to neighboring communities to see what they have adopted when discussing new ordinances and code changes. From my research, speaking directly to local municipal code and building licensing offices, I was informed that the city of Lewis, Dewey, and Sussex County permit pervious artificial grass. My request is for this Environmental Advisory Committee to recommend to the mayor and commissioners that pervious artificial grass with specific guidelines be permitted in our city code. However, I do not recommend the current language of the ordinance presented today, as I feel it is too limited and too restrictive. With this current ordinance, pervious artificial grass is only permitted within the 10% section of our building code defined as accessory, which sounds generous at first, but let's take a look a little closer at it. Given the standard 5,000 square foot lot, that equates to 500 square feet, the 10%. But unfortunately, included in that 10% are two required 9 by 18, and that's the minimum foot size parking spaces plus a sidewalk. Once that is included in the 10% accessory section, artificial grass will be limited to approximately 0 to 4% of the lot coverage for most residents. So on a standard 5,000 square foot lot, if a driveway is approximately 350 square feet, going by the requirement, and 50 square feet for a sidewalk, that leaves only 100 square feet remaining. This calculates only to a 10-foot by 10-foot area for pervious artificial grass. This is particularly frustrating to new construction homeowners as they have 2,500 square feet of natural area, as they are not permitted to use anything other than like mulch or pine needles and real grass. So my recommendation is to permit pervious artificial grass in the natural area, but with guidelines. The city of Thornton in Colorado has a great artificial ordinance. It allows, it is allowed in backyards and in side yards that are enclosed within a fence, with the exception of 3 feet from the back and side property lines, to encourage natural areas for shrubs, flowers, and native plantings. I've discussed this with Corey Shinko for about 2 years now. The problem is that the code change in the definition, it requires a code change in the definition of natural, and changing the code is a greater challenge than creating an ordinance that fits within our existing code. Since the definition of natural has not been updated, and nobody seems to know, 50 or 80 years within our code, I think it's probably time to look at that. Many homeowners have already added artificial grass to their properties. Some probably didn't know that it was not allowed. And I believe this is a great opportunity for this committee to legislate the most eco-friendly artificial grass and require it to be pervious. Set your requirements such as no PFAS or PFAS-free or the highest grade that is available to us, and ease your major environmental concerns knowing that the best product will be installed, unlike the ones that residents are installing without a permit. I believe the city residents want to follow the rules and do the right thing when it comes to the code, but it should not be too restrictive or too complicated. I hope this committee recommends a path forward that will allow residents to correctly install pervious artificial grass within the natural area of the code. Thank you.
My name is John Swift, 39 Henlopen Ave. Corey and several people brought up many different topics. The biggest thing I think that the Environmental Committee should be looking at is the water runoff, and they have an opportunity to do something about it. We put in, when we built our house, a pervious driveway. There's not a drop of water stands there. There's over 20 inches of aggregate below it. All the stones on the top are pervious as well. You look around the entire neighborhood. Corey talked about when new houses and the compaction of soil. There's at least 8 houses surrounding us, and I can show you pictures and videos of standing water this deep, and they are not new houses. But in our driveway, there's not a drop of water standing there. The city mailed out this brochure last year about trying to conserve water and about irrigation. I don't think people are talking about, when it comes to the water runoff, and they're talking about PFAS, well, what about all the fertilizer that's running off from these lawns? In 2 years, we've had to replace sod 3 times. The chemicals that go down are at least 7 times a year that are going into the yard. I don't know if that's being factored when you're comparing PFAS versus fertilizers, the lawn mowing equipment, the edging equipment, and all those parts. Plus, when it comes to the size of the driveway, that's just our driveway. That doesn't talk about people's backyards and making manageable. The water runoff is incredible from our neighbor, not just our house. And this isn't just about our house. This is about the city of Rehoboth and the water runoff that's going on throughout the city. When I've talked to Corey, not just the past 2 years, he said roughly 25 to 30 new homes are going up. So it's an opportunity to take water from running off into the streets, into the neighbors' yards, and into the other parts of the environment and do something about it now. But I don't feel like the town has adjusted it. Like, they don't want to deal with the artificial turf. Well, what about pervious pavers? They don't want to do that because it becomes structure. It has to either be grass, mulch, or pine straw. Those are the only 3 options right now. They're not very flexible. Right now, the option is in Dewey, or in Lewis, or in Sussex County, that you can put in artificial turf. I don't know why it's taking Rehoboth so long to catch up on all of these other things. We definitely want to put in something that's PFAS-free. I don't know if I haven't been able to find something that Francis was talking about, an option that there are none. I don't know that that's the truth, but there seems to be other options. Well, if not the artificial turf, how about putting in pervious pavers? Our pervious pavers, that's fine, but then that's considered structure. So you've kind of put yourself in a box. It's time to break out of this box and do something about the water runoff. Thank you.
Craig, I have...
Other public comments? Okay. Yeah, I'd like to wrap this up, so.
Okay, I had one other comment, though, on the thing, which is just this, because the other big concern I had was that the wording, Corey, about putting it in the backyards behind the fences. Well, all along where I live, which is along Silver Lake, we have backyards. I'll put that one on. We have backyards. They back up. Our backyards back up to the lake, and pretty much none of the neighbors except one has, big fences. Well, I'll just speak to the wildlife. That is a great blue heron there. That's not a statue. That's a bird. And we have, I'm sorry, I didn't finish my thought, that all along the lake, people have, well, at least now, have the old fences, picket fence or a nice wrought iron fence. You can see through it. If you're in Stockley Street Park, you can see all up to the, toward the lake tip, and you can see all of that nature because people don't have fences. So, I mean, one of my concerns is the issue of saying it's okay to put it in backyards. One, our backyards are backing up to our lakes, and two, I am really worried about this, which is that it leads to this situation of fences, and this is the other neighbor. So they illegally replaced all of their sod and built out their patio and added, that's artificial turf, and that backs right up. Here's a picture I just took a week ago with the snow, and that backs right up to the Silver Lake branch. So again, you know, the idea of putting it in backyards and behind fences, that does not keep microplastics infused with PFAS from being shed into the lakes.
Any other questions up here from members of the committee or anyone online? Okay, so path
Yeah,
forward.
Craig, I have one more. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yes, Dick, go ahead.
Corey, could you just clarify, please, because somehow I've missed it in all of this. How does the proposed draft impact existing properties that have artificial turf? Is there a short answer to that?
That's an excellent question. This does not answer that. We would, what we've tended to do, which was in the pervious driveways, is use because this is in the zoning code, this would be treated as a non-conformity. And so if we were to discover that, we could add language in there that would have some type of waiver language, or we could have language that would be similar to the garage apartments, where we would ask any property owners that have artificial turf to let the city know what type of turf system that they use. Because again, this isn't about material this is about material standards, but it is also about zoning. And so we would look at the amount and the location of it under the proposed draft. But that would be some language that we could add in specifically in this section that could at least refer to the nonconformity article of the zoning code.
Thank you, that's helpful.
That was a great question. Other questions? Okay, so we need to define next steps. Couple of things I'm going to throw out. One is, you know, I think this ordinance needs to get moved forward so that at least there is an ordinance out there. So, and again, whatever the language of the ordinance is, ultimately is, but at least there's an ordinance that allows Corey, the building officials, to manage future installations of artificial turf at a minimum, right? We can talk about what to do with the existing based on that ordinance, but what we have today is there's no way for the building officials to enforce artificial turf, the implementation of the installation of artificial turf. So I think it's critical that we move this forward. The question I have in my mind is, one of the questions I have in mind comes back to PFAS. So what Corey's proposed is based on manufacturer specifications, right? Do we take a step back and say, okay, what I'm hearing is there's nothing that exists that does not have PFAS. But do we take a step back and say, do we, between now and the next meeting, say, okay, do we do some research, I don't want to say real research, that I'm not questioning the research Francis has done, but do we give everyone the opportunity, whether it's us up here, whether it's individuals in the public, to go do some research and see if there could be some artificial turf out there that does not have PFAS, or potentially has such low levels of PFAS that we would consider that okay. So that would be one. Two, and again, we're focused on artificial turf. We've talked a lot about, Lakes Management Plan. And as some of you know, at the last commissioners meeting, last two commissioner meetings, there was discussion about, pervious surfaces, non-pervious surfaces. In advance of the last meeting, we were going to look at that ordinance. I did some research about pervious surfaces, about ordinance around pervious surfaces, and one of the I'm going to use the term things, it's not the right term, that I noticed was there were considerations, right? So if you installed a pervious driveway, then you could get, quote unquote, like a credit to do something else somewhere on your property. And I think that's something that at least needs to be considered. I'm not going to sit here and say that I support that or I understand all of the different implications of that, but I think that's something that absolutely needs to be considered. Because we do have a lot of properties in this town where there are significant runoff issues. Ultimately, we've got to deal with all the runoff issues so that it's not ultimately running off into our lakes. So let me stop there. So what I propose is we take the next month to allow ourselves, as well as anyone out in the community, to see if we can find products that would be acceptable, right? Either no PFAS or such low levels of PFAS, we would feel comfortable with it. Okay, that's one. So let me go ahead, Andrea.
I also think that putting pervious together with this makes sense, that we should work with both of these at the same time. I really think that's sensible.
Elise?
And I agree with Andrea. I mean, I'm concerned that we aren't going to see a pervious ordinance. I'd really like to see it. I don't know what the timeline is for that, Corey, or I know you said in your preamble that you want to combine them and work together, which makes sense. But, I mean, how can we get that done?
Just a short update. The city is anticipating getting, the Beacon Engineering has spent a good amount of time going over construction standards. The city is anticipating getting the first draft of those construction standards towards the end of this month. And we've already spoken with consultants from Beacon Engineering about pervious, and perhaps they could also give the city their take on a definition of pervious, because that would go with city infrastructure as well, sidewalks, streets.
Yes.
I know we're talking about private properties, but it's all connected. And we should get a copy of that at the end of this month, and Commissioner Thier, we could share, obviously, that with you.
That would be great. And to me, that's the logical step, right? My concern with that step is I think we're talking about construction standards, the opportunity to receive those, review those, go through the cycle. It's not going to be quick. So my question to Corey would be, how quickly do you feel we need to get something in place that regulates artificial turf? Let me just ask that question specifically.
I think if we can come to an understanding of the foundational definition of pervious, that would be a great starting point. What I don't want to have is conflicting definitions and with that basic statement. So if the construction standards have a definition in there, we'll take a look at that one first, and we can compartmentalize that so we can get something out as a first step, and then have the rest of it, pervious pavers, pervious other city infrastructures that can come downstream, so long as we work with that foundational definition.
Okay, so what I think just to go back, because I want to confirm what I believe I'm understanding, is that step one is definition of pervious. Artificial turf would come after that step one of pervious definition.
Correct.
Okay, all right. Questions up here, comments? Yes, Mary.
One thing, just listening to today's discussion, I think we have to be careful not to confuse natural area versus pervious surface, because there's a big difference in, like, pervious surfaces when you're talking about driveways and structures, right? And so I feel like the artificial turf is not a natural, wouldn't be as, even if it is a pervious, it's still not as pervious as an untouched area. So I just, if you're talking about combining the pervious ordinance with this, just not to confuse those ideas.
Okay, before I go to Jen, other questions up here?
I have a question for Corey and maybe people out there. Have you thought, are sedges a solution to any sedges plants, a solution to any of this?
There are solutions, and I do want to be mindful of, and I thank the public too for bringing up the other side of the argument, because I don't want to just look at this as a one-fit-all solution. It's a trade-off. And the points that the public brought up are very valid. We have phosphorus levels that peak in March a lot of times that run into our lakes. And those are detrimental to the environment as well. And a lot of that can come from runoff from poorly drained surfaces. And so we're going to have to walk the line between PFAS and then also consequences of, I think Jen posed a good question. Well, what could be an alternative solution? So city staff will look at that. But if we were to do anything other than this approach today, and we can do it, it's just going to be a bit of a more complex solution because we're going to start drilling into the definitions of structure, lot coverage, and natural area, and how those affect entire swaths of our residential districts, which incorporate 80% of our landmass here in Rehoboth.
I guess what I'm talking about are plants that they're not grasses, but they're grass-like. And is there any possibility that these kinds of plants, I mean, there are sedges that you can mow. How does that fit into this?
Currently, that's under natural area. It's
Yeah.
grass, plants,
Right.
natural mulch.
But I mean, in terms of dealing with the mud, it doesn't.
We'd want to look into that a bit more with some more research before providing an answer today.
Yeah.
Corey, if I could just mention one other thing that kind of links. I mean, again, there's different types of vegetation. So grass, yes, grass is hard to grow, and we have a lot of shade, and it is hard to grow. But there's other vegetation, and I just have to, me with the pool code. So I think I think some things of leading to more proliferation, I'll say, of artificial turf has to do with the proliferation of pools. People plan their house and their pool, and then the rest is left for the natural area. But then they find, well, if you're walking on grass around your pool, it's turned into mud. And so I think there's an even other issue that needs to be addressed. And sorry, I'll link it to the pool code because of chlorinated water requires vegetation, that the pool have vegetation and that way the chlorinated water can perk through the soil, and hopefully the vegetation, the roots, it can, help, with the chlorinated water before it gets to the water table. So I think there is another thing that our city needs to face up to, which is, people saying they're going to have natural area around their pools and that, and then it becomes a mess. It's, it's like what Jan is describing. So I think that, and yet, I really, I hope we're still talking about keeping our code to maintain our natural area, that our natural area is plant-based.
I want to go to the audience. I'd like to wrap up in the next couple of minutes because we got this gentleman here, did you have a comment? You have to come up to the microphone.
Hi, Eric Seward, 21 6th Street. I just want to, I'm not here for the artificial turf, but I'm here for the definitions of permeable products around the other ways. I didn't realize it was just a turf, but my thoughts are, as an environmentalist who has dealt with PFAS and had to eliminate PFAS from companies, I agree with the PFAS. I worked for W.L. Gore, so Gore-Tex, all that stuff. I did 32 years there. And I just want to say that also that's exactly what they're doing with the pools. They're taking the pools. They're not, the natural environment is not conducive. It's mud. I can see it in my backyard looking at the pool, and they're looking to do something different. My concerns with the artificial turf are no longer, with the PFAS is one. That's a much deeper thing, and that will end soon. Those companies will not be able to make those chemicals products anymore. That will end soon. But is that there's fire hazards? I mean, I'm looking. I don't have a place to start my fire. I tried to get some stone to put in my backyard, and they said that's not perm roll, and I'm like, I just wanted a little area to have my grill. I'm a charcoal person. I'm going to put it on the fire, and I just see these people with those areas as a concern of fire. So I just want to kind of agree with a lot of folks here as far as that, but I was more here to I think it's a perfect time to take the definition of pervious and move it into this what we're trying to get accomplished. I think that, and I was on the committee, and I think it's a very old, our definitions are not with technology as far as pervious. So I think a definition for what a pervious is needed, and I think that there's other materials out there that solve those problems other than just natural turf. So
Okay. So what I'd recommend, based on Corey's ask, that building and licensing in the city is given the opportunity to get some definition around pervious surface. Our discussion on artificial turf, which again, that's the purpose of what we're here for, is to consider Corey's ordinance on artificial turf. I think we have one next step at this point, which is to, whether it's us as committee members or the public, to do some investigation on turf that would be PFAS-free or would be near PFAS-free. Other than that, and I'll put it on the agenda for the next meeting. So if anyone finds anything, we can identify that and discuss it. Beyond that, we'll wait for Corey to come back to us on pervious surface. Did you need anything else from us? Because again, I just want to confirm, I think what I'm hearing is you want to define, I don't want to say you, but building and licensing, the city wants to define pervious surface first, then we'll come back and readdress artificial turf. Is that accurate?
Correct.
Okay, perfect. So as long as you're okay with it, as long as we've got agreement from you, we'll look for potential artificial turf options that are PFAS-free. But beyond that, we're going to go on hold with artificial turf. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
One last thing, the definition in PFAS-free under the revised states containing no intentionally added.
Right.
And I think one of the things that Francis shared today on the prohibitions on the very top of that page was intentionally added. So this definition is just emphasizing that portion of it. Just wanted to get that out.
Yeah, and Corey, a lot of the communities and states that have now prohibited PFAS or artificial turf, they in their in their consumer product things, they all have a kind of a consistent now good definition of what intentionally added means, and it's in the Cape May ordinance. It's also in that Rhode Island ordinance, and I have a copy of that to give to you because in that they clearly define what intentionally added PFAS means, and that would be important to have in the ordinance.
Chair, one follow-up question for the
Yes.
city's research. Is there any appetite in us looking at a more comprehensive change to, for the amount of artificial turf? Because currently it's sitting in that area where sidewalks and driveways are. It's not a structure, it's not natural area, and it's within that 10% range. Is there any, would you like us to look at any alternatives or alternative designs in the time being? We can do that while we also look for the definition of pervious.
Just to make sure I'm understanding, so allowing it beyond that 10%?
This is coming from concerns with the public from what they shared, yes.
Okay.
If there's, right now, there's 40% maximum lot coverage, 50% minimum natural area. Driveways and sidewalks are explicitly excluded as structure, but so they're not structural lot coverage, they're also not natural area either. So they exist in this world of 10% that allows for 2 off-street parking spaces and some walkways or sidewalks. That's where this, currently that's where this artificial turf, this improved land surface lives in and how much you can put on. And this is what I believe that Mr. Bowman was saying, that around 100 square feet, plus or minus, on a typical 5,000 square foot lot. Anything beyond that would require a definitional change or alteration to either natural area or lot coverage. They're going to work together. If there's any,
I want to just follow up question. That would require a code change, right?
correct.
So I don't think, we have the, I'm going to use the term, I don't think we've been kind of granted that authority by the Board of Commissioners to discuss any code changes related to the 3 things that you talked about. So I think right now it's a no, we can't go in that area. So I think it's pervious surfaces. I think the Board of Commissioners would need to discuss if that's, I think, again, to me, the Board of Commissioners is absolutely interested in talking about pervious, non-pervious surfaces. We're now waiting for you to come back with definitions. I think based on that conversation, the Board of Commissioners will then have to decide what's next, which may include, I don't want to say it will, which may include discussing the definitions of the 3 areas that you have. But until there's any interest from the Board of Commissioners to start discussing that, we can't discuss those things, because just, again, back to kind of the whole beginning of these, if there's not support from the Board of Commissioners, then it's not something we should be talking about. But I do appreciate you bringing it up. I hope you kind of understand why I'm saying no.
Absolutely, no, that's good clarification.
Yep, okay, great.
Commissioner, Ms. Good had her hand raised a while back. I
Okay.
don't know if she'd still
Sorry.
like to speak.
Mary?
Yeah, I think Corey basically covered what I was thinking about, which is I think the research that you've recommended is super important, and we ought to just make sure we do that, because I do think homeowners that have this runoff issue, that's like a serious concern that we need to figure out a way to address. I like the idea of looking at, and I will personally see what I can do to look at, are there native plants or other natural materials that could serve effectively in that way. So I think because it was a while ago, I don't want to repeat what everybody else has said, but in essence, my comments were along the same lines.
Thank you, Mary. Jan?
I just want to make 2 corrections. Francis, the issue with the soil is not a pool issue. I don't have a pool. It's not an issue with most people that I know. It is an issue with the soil in our part of town that is compacted. It's dirt, okay? Dirt is not pervious. Some dirt is, but old dirt that's been there forever is not pervious. All you have to do, our driveway, which used to be rock and dirt, the water sat there forever. Now it's pervious. It doesn't sit there forever. It just goes right in the ground. So when you're looking at definitions of pervious, for instance, Lewis considers decks pervious if they have a certain amount of space. That is not most the case. Most people do not consider, most communities do not consider decks pervious because of the compacted soil underneath. The compacted soil is not pervious. So they don't consider, that's very unusual what Lewis is doing, considering decks pervious. So if we're going to look at pervious, dirt is not pervious, especially if it's compacted. And in my neighborhood, my neighbors, they want their grandkids to be able to play ball in the yard. They don't want sedge through the yard. They want a grass that they can mow and take care of so the kids can play. What they have is mud and dirt, which is not pervious. So that's when, if we're going to do pervious, we need to do a lot of research into what actually makes pervious.
Yeah, and Jan, I was just saying, to me, the pool thing is another issue. It's an added thing for Corey to think about, because all of our code now basically calls for natural area around the pools, and yet that presents a problem.
It's a serious problem, Francis. We've dealt with it at the Board of Adjustment with some of the hotels having to deal with the area around their pools.
Yeah.
But I don't think you were here, or maybe you were, when the red shirts were here about pools. There's lots of things we need to do about pools. We don't have any protection for children around a pool like they do in other states. But, I wouldn't touch pools with a 10-foot pole.
Yeah. So I'm going to wrap things up, but I'll just one final comment. So, from my perspective as both a resident and a commissioner, yeah, we need to be addressing the pervious, the non-pervious, the runoff issues. We've got significant runoff issues in this town. If we're serious about our stormwater management, about protecting our lakes, about ultimately, those ultimately flow onto the beaches, then these are the conversations we have to have, and these fall into the conversations. If they're not easy conversations, they're difficult conversations. But if we want to fix it, we have to have those conversations. So, Corey, I look forward to the report back from Beacon and your definitions on pervious. I think we all do. So again, thank you. I really appreciate it. Okay, I want to move on to dark skies. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, Marco. Okay, what I've brought up on the screen is the latest draft of the Dark Skies Ordinance. This is, I received some additional feedback from our last meeting. Excuse me. I received some feedback from, some additional feedback from our last meeting, as well as some of the conversations that we've had. So my goal here would be to, walk through this as quickly as we can, incorporate any additional comments. I believe we're at a point where we should be able to wrap this up, pass it on to city administration for their review, and ultimately forwarding on to the Board of Commissioners. For those of you who have not heard or have not seen the dark sky compliant fixtures that we've discussed in previous meetings, the two samples that are going to be installed on the boardwalk, one of those samples, there's two fixtures, one of those samples has been installed. It's at Queen Street, so there's two fixtures right next to each other on Queen Street, right off of Queen Street. There are two more that are going to be installed tomorrow, just north of that location. Once I know exactly where that is, I'll let you know, but I'm assuming, a block or two down. I'd encourage everyone to go look at those lights. I've had a chance to get out there a couple of times. When I look at them from a distance, they look really good. I don't say look really good, they look good. But when you get up real close to those lights, particularly like when you're right underneath them, it does feel a little overwhelming, the amount of light that's coming off of them. My understanding is that these lights are going to be dimmable, so maybe it's that they're just set at the highest level and ultimately they're going to dim them down, but that would be my one consideration. But I do feel as though when I look down the boardwalk from a distance, a couple of blocks down, and you can see the existing lights and the new lights, it really is a dramatic improvement. It really is. It's just when you get up close to him, it feels like, it's the middle of the day in the sun. So anyone who has an opportunity, definitely go up there. Would love to get your feedback. Don't just forward it to myself. You can forward it to, to Taylor, to Mr. Tedder, or to Mr. Matlos, because they're looking for feedback as well. So, yeah, they're very bright. Yeah, and I do have that question, right? They're supposed to be dimmable, so we're in a situation where it's set at the highest level, and if there's a kind of a normal operating level that is lower than that, it'd be interesting to see what it would be like. Okay. All right, so let's move on to the ordinance. I'd like to move through this as quickly as possible, so I'm just going to scroll down. All right, everyone should be able to see this online. If you can't see it online, Mary, Dick, just let me know, Kathleen. I do have, with some of the changes that we've made, I do have some red line in here. So if everyone could just, I guess to themselves, just look at it. I prefer not to read line by line, and I'll just kind of look for some cues. If we're comfortable with what is here, if there's any comments or questions, definitely let me know. We're on the purpose section. Here we did add an E related to environmental benefits. Any questions, any concerns, any comments?
Nope.
Okay. Moving down definitions, a change to curfew. So we remove zoning district. We went ahead and moved developed lot area. Kathleen, this came from you, and I'm trying to think.
The definition for developed lot area and hardscaping were removed because the statute really didn't use those terms in other areas of the statute, so that I think they were a carryover from a different ordinance. So just to simplify things, I didn't feel that those were needed in this statute.
So just to confirm what Kathleen was saying, she mentioned developed lot area and hardscaping. So we removed the old C, developed lot area, and the old H, hardscaping. Seemed logical to me. Any questions, any concerns? Okay, I'm just moving down. Just to highlight under K, light trespass. We had discussed at the last meeting, light trespass, visible, exceeds 0.5 lux was what I had written down that we had all agreed to. I'm getting some shakes of some head here. Okay. Sky glow is also removed. Kathleen, help me out here. I think this was another term that...
Yeah, I think, again, it's a concept that's used in discussing dark skies, but it really wasn't needed for this ordinance. So, and it's also not really a technical term either. So, just trying to simplify to what was actually needed definitionally.
Okay. Questions on that one? Everyone okay? All right. Some language changes, really some adjustments around, we're now under 104A, applicability, effective dates, which references 109. We had discussed under 109A2 removing removing the term administrative and just leaving city staff, which provides them the opportunity to determine who's going to review. There was a question around C, where we have the latter, I'll just kind of highlight the latter part of that, more restrictive provisions in terms of minimalizing light pollution shall apply. There's a question about, were there any contradicting, any provisions that might contradict each other, and I'm not sure that there are. Kathleen, I think you had some more, did you have anything additional on that one?
Yeah, I think that's just to, I'm not really personally familiar with the permitting conditions that pertain to outdoor lighting. And I assume that we're talking here about outdoor lighting that's part of, the construction process. So I think we just kind of wanted to say if there are other regulations out there that are more restrictive, this statute wouldn't open the door for a loophole.
Okay. I'll make a note to that as we send it to the city and the city solicitor to see if they have any questions about that.
Yeah.
Can we go back to B for?
Yes.
Before you go to, I did miss the last meeting, but just so I completely understand what we're saying here is that every homeowner in the city needs to comply within 6 months with this ordinance, regardless of whether it's new construction, the house has been there for 30 years, doesn't matter? Am I reading that properly?
Which?
So on B, it says that all outlet light or fixtures installed or replaced need to comply within 6 months of the ordinance.
That is correct. So there's a couple of parts to this, right? I think there's 3 parts. One is all new has to comply, right? Anything that's existing, we've put it in here 6 months, and December 31st, the Board of Commissioners will ultimately decide to accept that or to change it to something else, okay? So the third is, there is much further down in the language, you can apply for a temporary, I don't want to use the term variance, but a temporary extension. Thank you, Elise. To get a temporary extension.
Okay, I just want to make sure I understand that. That means every homeowner in the city would have to comply with this within 6 months. So
That
they
is
would
correct.
have to buy new light fixtures for the outside of their house, regardless of when they were put in. No? Okay, maybe I'm reading it wrong.
Yes. No, hold on. So I want to
very
I want to keep up here for a second.
No, it's
Go ahead.
more about light trespass. It's not about
Yeah.
having to change out.
Yeah. So keep in mind
But if you're-
Your exterior light fixtures are
Not trespassing
not
into.
compliant with dark skies, regardless of whether anyone's complained or not. They have to be replaced.
So, so the intent of this is we want everyone to adhere to dark sky compliant fixtures, okay? The enforcement of this code is on the property line, 0.5 lux, okay? So if you're light trespassing onto your neighbor's property, based on that 0.5 lux,
Yeah.
it's going to have to be addressed right away, okay? I would certainly look over time that people, as they replace lights, they put in the dark sky compliant fixtures. They work to shine their lights just in their own yard, right? This is not about me telling you you cannot put all the lights you want as long as it stays in your yard. If you want to do that, great. Just don't bother your neighbors, right? So, any other questions up here? Yes.
So the statute, the ordinance requires that all the lights be shielded. So I guess now I'm confused about whether you're, even if you're not causing light trespass on your neighbor, you're still supposed to shield your light. And so, do you have a sense of, is that going to be, most people don't have shielded lights and have to do that? And the second question I have looking at it, The motion sensor lights, the way the proposed ordinance is worded, it's not clear whether they have to be shielded or not, or whether they just have to turn off after 5 minutes.
So I believe the ordinance says all lights have to be shielded and pointed downwards. Kathleen, you can correct me if I'm wrong. There might be an exception here for entry lights. That's a little bit further down in the language here.
Yeah. Let's see. Let me look at my.
Yeah, so there's only a handful of exceptions under citywide requirements, A, shielding. All outdoor fixtures should be fully shielded. String lights are excluded. Seasonal lighting, those that light up a flag.
Yeah, so that is a legitimate concern because some people have lights, including myself, currently affixed near their front door that are not shielded, although mine are with the lights are within fixtures that are quote unquote opaque. So it's I don't think anyone would complain about my lights because they really don't extend beyond the property line. But technically speaking, to be in compliance, theoretical compliance, I would have to replace those fixtures within this, the 6-month period. So the alternative to having a complete, all lights have to be shielded, we would have to come up with something that basically said, with regard to existing non-conforming fixtures, that they would for sure not be ones that resulted in measurable light trespass. So that would be the option for that. And it could be written that way, but right now what we're proposing is a complete dark sky approach that strives to get all residential lights into the category of being shielded so they're pointed downward and not emitting light just kind of sideways or upward.
Comments, questions? Go to the public.
One of the issues that we talked about at the very first presentation was the number of complaints the chief of police is getting about light trespass. The big lights that shine on your yard, but also shine in your neighbor's windows, and that was a huge issue. And I thought that we had decided that a certain period of time to comply if there were, and you have to apply roughly immediately if there are significant complaints about the light trespass. So that there was a difference. I mean, I have motion detectors, and they shine down. But you know what? We're on a 50 by 100 lot. They shine straight down. However, I know, well, there's construction next door to me for the last 2 years, but I suspect that, in the middle of the night, if an animal walks by or something, that they're shining on my neighbors, on their side of the fence, probably not in their house. But I did think we had discussed this at length last time because of the chief's observation and because of the complaints that many of us have heard about the lights constantly shining in people's houses. So You have a complaint against you, you have to do it right away. No complaint, then a period of time, and I think 6 months is probably short. But, that's what I thought we had left it at.
Other questions, other comments?
I think I'm still a little confused. So the complaint versus not complaint are two separate issues. So my question originally was, if there's no complaint and you have light fixtures, say flanking your front door, that are not compliant, that once this ordinance is passed, that homeowner is required within 6 months to change those light fixtures out. If there's no complaint, if there is a complaint, that's a different situation. But if there's no complaint, am I reading that properly?
I think we had a longer time in the original.
Yeah,
Heather,
so
that's what I was saying, is we had a longer time to come in compliant, not 6 months.
I guess I have, having just been through the permitting process recently, it's very challenging. And I guess it doesn't quite sit well with me that you can go back after the fact. Like, once my project is approved and it's permitted and I build it, then to come back in 6 months and say you have to change out your light fixtures, it just leaves me with a little bit of hesitation.
Well, then if you have the point of grandfathering.
If there's no complaint. If there's a complaint, that's a different issue.
Then I don't think.
Yeah.
I think the point of grandfathering is that over time, eventually, and this is grandfathering zoning ordinances and building permits, over time, everything comes into compliance, right? So, unless you've gotten a variance, but over time, everything will. The way that we do things in our city by allowing people to take down a structure, not all the way down, and, et cetera, that's a whole different matter. But the idea of grandfathering is that over time, everybody will be compliant. So, over time, and the other thing, though, is the complaints. And the complaints are serious. I mean, I know a person on my committee, I know people who are suffering from this constant searchlights in their house. And that's why I think 6 months is probably too short of a time if there are no complaints. If there are no complaints, probably 6 months is, if there are lots of complaints, 6 months is probably too long of a time. But
So I think go ahead, Mary.
So I think from what I'm hearing, there's two separate issues, and one is light trespass and the other one is dark sky for all the other good reasons. But the ordinance doesn't really distinguish, so you're saying in practice there's going to be a distinction where if it's light trespass, then it has to be fixed. But that's not really how the code it reads presently. So the way it reads right now is, everybody has 6 months to get their lights in compliance, and that, if that's what you want, that's fine. But it sounds like you want to have two separate tracks: people who are creating nuisance and everybody else. So I think if that's the case, maybe that should be more clearly stated, because and especially if you have to, and I also think you need a little more public awareness too, if you want everybody to do something in 6 months, and I think that could be pretty chaotic. And also I think Heather's point is good, as far as if people have built something recently in compliance with all the code and now they're being told they have to redo it right away, that's going to create a lot of controversy. So I guess you have to try to figure out and recognize there's two separate things we're trying to accomplish here. And one is to eliminate nuisances to people, and the other one is to create the dark sky environment that we all would like to see.
To just say one more thing, Mary, I totally agree with you, and I think we don't want those homeowners who are in that situation that I'm talking about getting upset and putting a dark shadow on our dark skies plan because they're upset about that, when there are so many other good things that are going to come from it. But I definitely see that as a sticking point that could create some bad publicity just overall with how people feel about it. So,
Elise, do you have a comment?
Now that I'm focused on the language, I'm really struggling with what it means by stating fully shielded. And maybe that's where I think we're going to have examples of what shielded light means. Our porch has little ceiling lights we don't have fixtures, but they're little, is that a shield? Would
They're
that be
fully-
considered a
your
shield?
roof is shielded.
Right.
Yeah. fully
Exactly,
shielded.
that's a shield,
That's the shield.
but are people going to understand that? Maybe further out, we're going to have examples of what shielded means. Is it encased,
So,
in a structure, a light structure, a fixture?
yeah, so one of the next steps from us was
yeah.
for us to come up with some educational materials, okay? I do, I definitely appreciate where you're coming from and understand where you're coming from. So maybe we do need to, rather than 6 months, because to me, there's a couple of parts to this, right? One is, as was mentioned, we need to deal with light trespass, okay? It is a problem in this town. It's a growing problem in this town for a variety of reasons, which we don't need to get into here, but we do need to give residents the ability, if somebody puts in a light and it's shining in their house, the ability to deal with that. Okay, and this clearly does that with our definition of light trespass and lux. There's also the desire for this to become more of a dark skies community. But that is probably more, I don't want to say probably, but it's going to be longer term than it is going to be shorter term. So to that point, do we change the compliance period from 6 months to something other than 6 months? Because embedded in here is if you've got a light trespass issue and it's bothering your neighbor, then there's a way for it to be dealt with, okay? Beyond that, our goal would be over time, particularly the new development, right? Immediately, it's got to be dark, has to be dark sky compliant. Well, to me, that's pretty straightforward. All the developers just need to be educated and understand this is what the expectations are, so don't propose anything else, propose or install anything else. Expectations out there. But for those of you, that don't necessarily comply 100%, aren't violating light trespass, they're given a more extended period of time to come into compliance. So do we change that 6 months to something else? Yeah, go ahead.
Not to throw another monkey wrench in the plan, because I generally think it's a great idea. I don't believe that when you get your drawings permitted that you have to submit what your light fixture is. So I guess I would just question the city's ability to enforce this. And if is there some other mechanism of enforcement for this plan going forward? Because I think one of the things I learned on the last committee is don't pass a rule that you can't enforce. So I would just throw that out there as something. And also when you say you are going to keep the 6 months and you go to replace your light fixture, as far as I know, you don't have to get a permit from the city to replace your light fixture. So they really don't have any say, or it would be great if they had a bunch of suggestions they could give to homeowners and say, pick one of these, but I don't think that really exists yet. Yeah. So sorry for the monkey wrench.
Go ahead. Other comments up here? Any comments from the remote members? Okay. All right. So you're right. And it's, when we started talking about the pervious and impervious ordinance just a couple of days ago, there's no way to enforce that. We're missing definitions, no way to enforce it. So you're absolutely right. Anything that we discuss up here, there needs to be a clear way to enforce whatever it is. Light trespass to me, was always kind of, I don't want to say at the center, but an important part of this. So if with the proliferation of, your LED lights, your high intensity lights, residents need relief from neighbors who may put up a high intensity light. And I believe this ordinance addresses that. Do we all agree that this ordinance addresses that with a clear, enforceable process and action?
Yeah, but
Yes.
just to say, because maybe Heather I don't hear the day we had that long discussion about that the spirit, if you will, is that, there's no intention, if you will, we're not going to have the police out there inspecting. We're not going to send, or city inspectors, we're not going to send people out there. It's more that, it would be in the code, or I think in the new, it would have to go into the building code that they will look at that as new homes are built. So we had talked about that, and that idea does need to be followed up on, because it would need to be that the building people would look at that now. So now they'll be required, or at least it'll say they're required to install these kind of lights. But as far as the people who already had them, it was more of almost like the noise ordinance. That would be more complaint driven. People call because, or write in. Now we have to write in, fish formally. You have to write in and complain that these lights are shining right at you. And other than that, people aren't going to complain. And then there was no intent of like that, at 6 months, having inspectors go out and check that everybody's got a shield on top. But it would happen naturally in a way. So I think that it wasn't, so, but I think the education thing, so it is a little, maybe it will be confusing to people who haven't like really been here all the time and understand what the spirit and intent is. And yeah, because I wouldn't want people to be against this just because of like what you're raising, Heather. Yeah. That they're worried they got to replace all these lights they just put in,
I think that if our intent is that we're not going to enforce something unless someone complains, as far as existing lights, that's not the best way to go out there with the ordinance. I think you have to, maybe say people are grandfathered, existing structures are grandfathered unless they cause a nuisance to their neighbors or something like that. And then have a phase out, a way that, you put it in the building code, and going forward, if they make a change, then they have to be compliant, but I think just a flat out, everybody has to be in compliance at this date, and then have this discussion, well, don't worry, if no one complains, then it's okay.
You don't really have to remove and replace all your lights. Yeah, I tend to agree with that. I think we could solve that by, first of all, maintaining the light curfew, maintaining the requirement for any security lights that they be pointed downward and on a timer. I do agree that we should go out there with having any new construction within a certain amount of time where there's notice. Any new construction should utilize the more ideal self-shielded lights. Because once those are installed, there really shouldn't be any problems and shouldn't, require much monitoring. But, as far as, should there be a permanent grandfather? Should it be, ultimately require grandfathering to go away after 2 years, 5 years? I mean, that's kind of, I don't really have any strong feelings so long as problematic light installations that are causing measurable light trespass can be immediately addressed.
Other thoughts?
I would just say, first of all, the lights, I have the same recessed lights that they are shielded because they're recessed into the ceiling. A big issue is bulbs, folks. And that's the same with the issues with the boardwalk. The fixture itself, the light is inside, just like a recessed light. But the light is that big, bright white that Kathleen will know from Delmarva Power and Light. That is, it's a big white light. And they may be dimmable, but they're very, very, very light. And in fact, if any of you remember, I have it on a picture, but I don't know how to get it to you all, of, not compliant that we showed with light trespass in our slide. That has light trespass only, but it's the light bulb that's the big problem. Yeah. And so a lot of people, just by changing a light bulb, can make a huge difference in their light trespass. With all the kelvins that are 200, 300, 400, I don't know, I had a lighting expert with me this weekend who gave me a lot of feedback about a lot of times it's just the bulb. Mm-hmm. So I have no problem, actually. Over time, Fenwick Island has actually a lighting ordinance required for Delmarva to follow and for everybody else to follow. Lewis has a lighting ordinance. We do not have a lighting ordinance. So that has to be part of our building code, and it has to be included in your permit application. Otherwise, people are going to do what they want. I mean, you can go to Home Depot and get dark sky compliant lights for $21.95. Dark sky is becoming so, common. I mean, right now Fenwick is rewriting their whole lighting ordinance to be dark sky compliant. Lewis is toying around with the idea. In their new subdivisions in Lewis, they already have to be dark sky compliant. It doesn't say it because they didn't want to get people scared. But in the normal...
But they do require full cutoff, Jan? They do require full cutoff in new lights in Lewis?
In new development subdivisions in Lewis. Yeah. Okay. They require... Their list of how they require lighting, it's essentially dark sky compliant without saying it. Fenwick Island does not do that, but Lewis needs to, essentially the whole town, except for the new subdivisions, is not dark sky compliant, and that's what they're working on. For us, giving a period of time, I think is the way to do it, and putting it in the code. There's a lighting section. This is part of maybe building and licensing. I don't know where it goes in the code, Craig, but building and licensing needs to have these lighting requirements as part of the requirement for a permit. And the other thing, not just for a permit, but for a reconstruction, it needs to be included, not for just new, renovation. But renovation. Couldn't think of the word. Knew it began with an R. Anyway, that's...
Okay, so...
Commissioner, Ms. Good had her hand raised.
Oh, sorry, Mary.
Hi, Craig. I've been listening to the conversation, and while I do agree that for existing homeowners that have done a lot of work on their lighting, we need to give grace, we need to give plenty of notice. However, I think to say that there's a complete grandfathering sort of defeats a bit of the purpose of this whole ordinance. And I feel like most of our city is built out, so the number of new constructions or even renovations is going to be a fairly small portion of the overall city. Yeah. I think that's just something we need to consider in this whole thing. And I know in the interest of time, we probably need to move on. But I wanted to make that point.
Yeah, I wanted to raise a question just because I can't remember, but I know we discussed the reason why we didn't want to say grandfathered, but now I can't remember what it is. But there was a good reason why we didn't want to put in the thing about grandfathering. And that's what that led to that then more convoluted discussion of, well, unless somebody complains, like out at my back door, yeah, I never turn it on. Is anybody going to complain about it? No.
I think that if I recall correctly from the conversation, there really seemed to be two main objectives of this ordinance. One is to protect homeowners from neighbors, lights shining in their windows and people being able to sleep and that kind of thing. The second really is the environmental piece. And if we're saying we care about the environmental piece, then to grandfather in the majority of homeowners, it sort of feels like we're really then only dealing with the first objective, which is the nuisance, the complaints about somebody's light shining in their window.
That's probably why we had that talk and kind of took away the grandfathering, because we really want to keep the dark sky objective in there too.
I guess just from what I'm hearing, people saying, well, we're not going to enforce it unless someone complains. To me, that's kind of like not the way to approach an ordinance. So, you know, I've, as a lawyer who's worked in developing environmental regulations and such, to me, that's like a flaw in it. And so, you know, they're enforceable. It's with discretionary, but I think if you already have the curfew and other things in there, to think that everybody in town is in 6 months is going to shield all their lights, I just don't see it as going to happen. And I think other people recognize, yeah, that's fine because we're not going to enforce it. Well, maybe we ought to think it through a little better. I mean, I'm in favor of having a compliance throughout the town, but it just sounds to me like we're putting something in there that we know isn't going to work. That's just a
3 to
concern I
5
have.
years. I thought we had talked about that last time, around 3 to 5 years for everybody else to come in unless there were complaints. And the other thing that needs to happen is, we were talking about education you all earlier, but there's tons of education material that we can share. And I know Frank and Kate and I are going to Main Street March or April, I forget when it is, to talk about dark sky and the impact on the businesses. But we have tons of educational material that we can share, and I think RBHA will probably put it in their newsletter about, you know, dark sky and how important it is, blah, 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 with lots of links. And I suspect the Cape Gazette would, and I suspect also that, you know, we could do, just like we're doing show and tell, we could go and do show and tell with other groups. I don't know how many more there are between RBHA and the Main Street and Chamber. But people need to be educated about it. And you know, I mean, but we can't even get people to sign up to get the city emergency. I mean, we got an emergency thing a few minutes ago about the storm coming, this water, and I texted 5 different people and none of them had gotten it. Well, they still haven't signed up. So anyway.
All right,
Do
so
we
let's go
just
back.
simply want to change is the simple solution for this ordinance to keep it, is to just change that 6 month to, I don't know what, 3 years, 5 years, and just so that you have a drop dead time, but that would allow homeowners with current lights and all that.
Well, I think
They
there's levels of what can be done. I think changing light bulbs is easy for people, and maybe that should be distinguished, but actually making a structural, putting new lighting fixtures in, I think asking everybody to do that within 6 months might be a big ask. I don't know.
No offense to electricians, but they're expensive.
Actually, a handyman can change your fixture.
I don't know. I haven't looked into it. I just hearing people saying,
So,
you know, it could be an issue, and then other people saying, well, don't worry, we're not going to enforce it.
I mean, you bring up a good point, right? This part of, I don't want to use the term it's not going to be enforced. It comes back to, does the city staff have the bandwidth to enforce this clause? And the answer is probably not, right? And when I say this clause, I'm talking about 104B, right? Subject to permissive compliance delay of up to 6 months, from the prior period ending December 31st, 2006. I'm reluctant to not have anything in here, because then it's just it will be interpreted as everyone's grandfathered, okay? And I'm not comfortable with everyone being grandfathered. So do we change this? So one consideration would be to change the date, instead of being 6 months, we put in a year and a half, 2 years, whatever it may be. We could potentially expand this, so instead of it says all outdoor light fixtures installed, bulbs have to be changed. You know, a little less specific on, instead of saying fixtures, has to be dark sky compliant, which could be changing bulbs, so on and so forth. That could be one potential option. But I guess one of my concerns even with that option is, you know, we're still back kind of in this area of enforceability, right? If, you know, the city doesn't have the staff to go around to all of the houses and say, okay, you haven't changed your fixtures, you have to change them. So even changing that language, I'm not sure what that necessarily does either. So are we just back to, we're going to change the 6 months to a year and a half? We send it to the Board of Commissioners with an asterisk. We're not really sure. You know, these are the conversations that we've had. I think this ordinance overall, I mean, I think it's a big step in the right direction, right? When it deals with the light trespass, and two, particularly with their education, it clearly communicates that our goal over time is to be a dark sky community, okay? My perception is that we need to do something sooner rather than later, particularly get the 20 to 25 new houses that are built every year, plus renovations that, okay, these are the new guidelines. So if you're building a new structure, this is what our expectation is. If you're going to change stuff out, this is what our expectation is. You know, educational requirements, I think part of what we develop as educational requirements, we can work with building and licensing. Okay, when you come in to get your permit, there's a packet that they get. Okay, here's what we're looking for in terms of exterior lights.
Yep.
So I'm reluctant to take that section out because then it gets interpreted as we're just grandfathering everyone. We could change the language, but since the city doesn't have the staff to go around to every house in the city 6 months from now and say, hey, you haven't changed it out, I'm not sure that changing the language necessarily helps. So is the direct answer right now is we, instead of making it 6 months, we make it some greater period of time. When I give it to the city administration, we flag this as something that we had long discussions on, and there probably, you know, there may, I don't say probably, but there may need to be some additional considerations.
I think that's a good recommendation, Craig.
Okay. So if we're going to change it from, thank you, Mayor, if we're going to change it from 6 months, what are we comfortable with?
Year and a half.
No.
3 years.
Yeah, that seems like a good starting point.
The 3 years?
3 years?
No, a year and a half.
Yeah, year and a half.
I'm fine with 3 years as long as we retain the provision, I guess it's A2, that says that all residential or commercial light, whether installed before or after the effective date, that have been determined by city staff to result in the unacceptable glare and light trespass, that they would be without any delay. So as long as we're saying that there's some redress for offending light configurations. I think what I would like to really see is the B should be changed. If B's changed, and that would be clarified to say that the compliance delay in B does not override the remediation that could be required under A2.
Craig, do you mind scrolling up so we can see the top of A?
A2.
So we can see all of that. Yeah, thank you.
Just
have been determined by city.
Okay, let's start with the time period. I've heard a year and a half, I've heard 3 years.
I was gonna go with, why don't we just land at 2?
Okay, 2 years?
I was going to
That
suggest that we
seems
just leave it
reasonable.
blank and let the city commissioners and let the city staff come up with what their recommendation is.
I think we need to give a recommendation.
Yeah, I'd
we
prefer to
need-
give
Yeah,
a
I agree.
recommendation.
To start with a base somewhere. 2.
2 years?
2 years. 2 years.
Yeah,
is
I like that too, Craig, that 24 months. You know, I think if we go to 3 years, it starts getting lost.
Yeah, I agree.
It just
I
doesn't
agree,
keep
Dick.
it current. It doesn't keep it in front of the city and the residents and the developers.
Yeah.
Two years, right?
Yep.
This will change, but I'll just put this in here for now, right? So 26, 27, 28. Okay. So that was the first part. The second part is, do we need to add any additional language about not overriding A2?
What if up at the top of A, Craig, where you have, subject to the effective date, does that effective date need to be, or instead of saying the effective date, well, so no, that effect, see now there's 2 effective date, oh, okay. Subject to the effective date. Oh, so that will be as of the effective date.
Maybe, yeah, I think as long as we restored the struck out language about without compliance delays in A. So basically, all new lights would comply immediately, and then all trespassing lights would not be able to rely on a compliance delay. But then B, that's where we talk about the compliance delay of up to 2 years. Does that make sense? So if you see back in the very first sentence under A, just restoring back those 3 words without compliance delays.
I
So
think in B, maybe you should just clarify that as long as they don't create a light trespass.
Yeah.
All lights that have been installed before the effective date that do not create light trespass have a delay up to 2 years. Something like that, because we want to make sure that any lighting that's creating a trespass it's clear that they have to come in compliance immediately.
Something like that?
Yeah.
Are we comfortable with that? Comfortable with that?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Moving
Yes.
along.
Yeah, you might want to throw Craig and which, and where you said and do, you could put and which do not, just for
Clarity.
English, like,
Yeah.
and which do not.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
F.
Okay, so the question here was, with the low-intensity landscape lighting, which is typically directed upward. Do we want to add, which is directed downward to this, to number 4?
I'll just say, I think so, because I think, again, the spirit is we're trying to say you can't have lights shining up. And I know I have, that thing of these landscape lightings, and they're all glowing up, and so I would support that.
Yeah, I agree. I think we're trying to, just so you're saying, Francis, in the spirit of the ordinance, directed downward. So we're on 104E4.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. All right, moving on. With F, I put in some of the section references, which are, potentially subject to change once this goes through city administration. Okay. So B, we're now under 105B, so some language changes here. Light trespass is generally prohibited, including for fixtures otherwise exempted from this ordinance or accepted from the shielding requirements in Section A of this subsection. So basically this says no light trespass at all. Remove limitations. And I believe that was a discussion from last time.
Yeah, that it becomes covered by other.
Yeah. Curfew, we had all lighting subject to ordinance shall be extinguished no later than 11 p.m., except at building entrances, which shall be extinguished no later than midnight. And lighting activated by motion sensor, which extinguishes 5 minutes after activation. Commercial uses, that was something we had added last time, including all internally and externally illuminated advertising signage. Okay, so E, total illumination maximums for business properties with internally illuminated signage are, okay. Kathleen, this was something that you had brought up.
Please unmute yourself.
She might be frozen.
Her mouth's moving.
Kathleen, we can't hear you.
You have to unmute yourself.
Is that better?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Finally, okay. So sorry about that. Yeah, so I couldn't, in my research, come up with a a firm idea of, for business signage, what would be an adequate lumens per sign or a maximum lumens per property. I mean, different statutes had things that varied all over the lot, so I just kind of left that blank for now, but I'll continue to research that and see if I can come up with something, or if any of you have any idea.
Any thoughts?
What does the city allow with lighting? They have signage rules for businesses.
Yeah, in a sense, it's not a, it shouldn't be a major deal, because I've been told that most internally illuminated signs are not all that bright, but you know, I've seen some in Rehoboth that seem to be very glowing, or maybe ones, they're actually, more of the offending ones are out on Route 1 as you come into the city.
So the city does have, okay. All
We
right,
already have that.
that's what I'm hearing.
We have something that regulates signage on commercial buildings in the city. So we'd have to look and see what the city has, but I'm pretty sure that they have pretty strict, you know, we don't have neon flashing lights that say "do drop in," you know. So I don't think we have, you know.
So in a sense, yeah, if we already have that, we may not even need paragraph E at all.
I'll do some research into that. And
Okay.
if there's something that's already in place, and to me, it would make sense that there's probably something in place just based on the signage as it exists today.
Can I just ask a legal question? Is Delmarva Power and Light covered by an ordinance that we develop in the city? I don't know the answer to that question.
I think they would, in the sense that their installation of streetlights is under a city contract. They're not,
Okay.
you know, the city could actually decide, as some cities have, like where I am currently in Palm Springs, they decided the city only wanted streetlights on major roads and at major intersections, so they eliminated streetlights all over the city. It's interesting. It really feels safe here, but I would say that it was kind of supported by the proliferation of landscape lighting properties.
Well, I know Henry told me that Delaware Electric Co-op, which serves off of New Road, is changing all of their lights. They're installing in his development dark sky compliant lights at their expense in their entire development. I don't know if that's something they do everywhere, but I just, not that I don't trust Delmarva Power and Light, but I would just wondered if maybe, Craig, you could find out, or we could find out if they're covered for whatever we do. I don't know, Mary, if you know that answer.
I don't see why they wouldn't be, but I don't know definitively.
Craig, if it helps, it's section 270-59 that has lighting restrictions on signs. And all it literally says is A, signs shall not be lighted in any manner which may constitute a traffic hazard or be a nuisance. B, no sign shall be erected in any district that provides blinking, moving, animation, revolving chaser lights, or moving spotlights. So I guess in one sense it leaves it a little open, which maybe that's good, that it just may not constitute a traffic hazard or be a nuisance.
So it's not as strict as what it would be under our ordinance.
Oh, you think that could allow for it to be,
Well, they don't have to
Higher
turn them off at night
lumens.
or late at night.
oh, no, I think they're still, oh, they don't have the curfew? There's no curfew on the,
Well, the curfew would exist. I think with E, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, right? So I'm looking at the code that you had just referenced. There's no restriction on lumens or the brightness.
no.
Okay.
No.
So the question is do we want to put some sort of restriction on the brightness?
Probably.
Okay. So if that's the case, what is a reasonable lumens to put in there? Does someone have a suggestion on?
Maybe we could look and see what they do in other dark sky communities. Kathleen, I don't know if we could do that and see.
Yep.
What is the level of,
Yeah, what are they doing in other dark sky communities? I mean,
of
Flagstaff,
the light.
Arizona is dark sky. Jackson Hole, Wyoming, I mean, they have lots of commercial in those places, so obviously they're dealing with it.
Yeah, I'll have to get back to you on that, but how about if I come back to Craig with kind of like at least 3 examples, and we can just pick one that seems appropriate.
Yeah, so I did a quick search, and lumens, general residential, maximum of 1,000, pedestrian comfort, commercial up to 10,000, which seems like a lot, but I don't know if that's a lot or not.
It is a lot.
Okay.
It is a lot. And the other thing is, remember in Rehoboth, we have commercial next to residential.
Yep.
And even one street over, so if you're on Baltimore and you walk down Baltimore Street, it is residential, commercial, residential, commercial for the 2 or 3 blocks of Baltimore Street. And that's not even hotels or anything. So yeah, we're very close.
Okay.
But we have street lights at no greater than 5,000 lumens.
We're thinking, in my discussion with my lighting person, they were saying that they now have 2,700 lumens, and they're using that a lot in Arizona as their maximum. So they used to only have 3,000, but I guess people who make light bulbs have gotten better at it.
So in that case, is it 1,000?
But do they have 1,000 lumens? I don't know. I
Yeah.
don't know. I just don't know. If somebody has it in their code.
The lowest lumens I've seen for streetlights is about 2,700.
But the lights on the building would be less than that.
Yeah, I would think so. So, I mean, we could go with something like 1,000 lumens per sign and a total of 2,500 lumens per property, and see what kind of feedback we get.
Yeah, this one's going to be a little challenging because I think 1,000, an amount per sign is probably pretty easy, but
Yeah,
depending on the size of the property, restricting to 2,500 could mean they could have 2 lights and they've got a very large commercial property. So, I don't have a problem. Again, this may be another one where we send it, say 1,000. We probably need to come up with some sort of methodology for maximum. I can hear some of the
based on
pushback
square
where
footage.
most of the, I mean, I'm just
lot
kind of
size.
thinking in the back, trying to think off the top of my head, okay, is there a commercial property right now? And again, I don't want to name anyone, right? Because that's not fair, but I'm just trying to think in the commercial district, do we have any issues where, and again, I don't want to say issues, but right, a lot of issues where we've got signs that are just really bad. And I'm not sure that we do.
If you don't have a problem with it, I can ask the Fenwick person who's doing dark skies and ask her what they're doing, how they're changing their lighting ordinance to reflect if that's okay.
Yeah, that would be
And
great.
I'll send a note back to
Yeah.
everybody. I'll send it to Craig, and he can send it out to everybody.
Okay, all right, so I'm going to put, for the purposes of moving on from this, 1,000, 2,500. Streetlights, I had highlighted this, 5,000 lumens, but I'm hearing potentially as low as 2,500, so. All right,
Actually, I think Harvey said 2,300, but I'm not 100% sure, but I will send you a note back.
okay, I'll do 2,300.
Okay. And I didn't look at see what Pittsburgh had either. I mean, we are not reporting burnt-out streetlights that we see, only because we don't want Delmarva to put the lights that Kathleen had, frankly.
Okay, so just continuing to move along here, we have under 109A, effective date is 30 days after an enactment, which is pretty typical, but again, Board of Commissioners decide what that is. Right, outdoor fixtures, adjustable dimmers, to comply with Section 105 to minimize glare, eliminate light trespass. And I
guess
think
one
this probably,
question
I'm
is,
now
do we-
looking at
do we-
D
Do we
under.
really need the extension now that we're going with a much longer period of compliance? Do we really need to put in that extension?
Probably not, right? Just take it out.
I would be in favor of that.
Okay, and then we're going to reference fees and penalties. Okay, so anything else on this? Any other questions, comments, concerns?
Concerns.
Yes,
We need to do education.
absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so what I'd ask for now is motion to send this to city administration, okay? They will then review it, bring it to the Board of Commissioners. What I will ask is I will put on the next agenda, education, okay? So what I'd kind of ask people to do is, to the extent you've got some educational materials that you can find, let's have a discussion about it at the next meeting and set forward a strategy to develop educational materials. And to me, part of that educational materials will be, when this is adopted by Board of Commissioners, there will be some type of communications campaign out to the residents, businesses, and so on, understanding that this is coming.
And I have a bunch of material from the International Dark Sky Association, and also some from my peers in Fenwick and Lewis have done too, that, I'll share with this group or Brooke or whoever you want it to. And I know RBHA will do something.
Okay, so if I could get a motion to, Marco, refer?
Yeah, that'd be fine.
Okay. Could I get a motion to refer the dark skies, excuse me, let me back up, right? To refer.
Community Lighting Ordinance?
Thank you. The Community Lighting Ordinance, as reviewed at this meeting, to the city manager and city administration for review and subsequent referral to the Board of Commissioners for action. Can I get a motion?
I so move.
Okay, second?
Second.
Okay, great. So I have a so moved from Mary Good. I have a second from Dick Byrne. Okay. We can just do it all in favor, right?
Yeah.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Opposed?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so we have, everyone's here, right? Okay, so motion carries 8-1. Okay, great. All right, we have one other item, which is trees.
Question, Craig.
Yes.
Is it, appropriate to have Heather say why she opposed?
That's entirely up to her. And I could always afford,
I would, but we're already so late.
okay,
Yeah, we can,
okay,
I don't want to take up too much time.
okay. We did have one more agenda item on the trees. Do you want to cover that today, or do you want to hold that until the next meeting?
I think we should move it.
Okay.
the next
Are you
meeting.
okay moving
I
it?
agree.
I think
Mary?
everyone's had
Yeah.
enough.
Okay,
think
having
we
said
should
all of
just
that, any commissioner, any committee member comments? Any other public comments? Okay, meeting adjourned. Thank you.